Consider this. Perhaps the greatest peril in human history wasn't conflict or wild animals, nor starvation, but merely the ordinary act of defecating in an inappropriate location. Picture this with your eyes shut. Winter, at the end of the last ice age. The wind doesn't just howl, it shrieks, and for months on end, the temperature remains relentlessly far below freezing. You find yourself in a dwelling constructed from wood, sod, and bones. Your entire family, all generations, huddled together side by side, sleeping close, since staying warm means staying alive. There's no privacy, no medical care, no plumbing, and no do-overs. When your body sends an urgent signal you can't dismiss, there's no restroom, no soap, and no fresh towel to use afterward. Should something go awry, if excrement pollutes water or food, or if parasites transfer via hands and implements, the threat isn't humiliation, it's annihilation. That raises a question that continues to puzzle archaeologists to this day. How did individuals from the Ice Age and their later Viking descendants survive environments that would finish off a modern person within days? Long before any written codes or scientific terminology, enduring the far north hinged on unwritten principles upheld through experience, memory, and tragedy. Excavations throughout northern Europe show that Ice Age settlements weren't disorderly clusters of desperate individuals, but rather meticulously arranged spaces formed by a profound and applied knowledge of contamination. Moreover, sleeping quarters were intentionally kept apart from food preparation areas. Crafting zones for tools were set downwind from living quarters, and refuse was stored well away from water supplies with a near ritualistic discipline. These layouts weren't random. They emerged from necessity rather than superstition. They were methods honed by watching, strengthened by mistakes, and maintained because they proved effective. Just one polluted water source could wipe out a whole community in mere days.
Don't leave us.
A single reckless choice during the long
Be
winter
strong,
isolation
brother.
might let disease spread stealthily
We're
among
here
20
for
people
you.
breathing the same air. Staying alive required unceasing alertness. Instead of focusing on heroics, those early northern groups grasped a truth that contemporary society frequently overlooks. Cleanliness wasn't ever about coziness, it revolved around organization. In the high north, winter wasn't merely an adversary to suffer through. It was a power that could be harnessed. As temperatures dropped well below freezing and persisted for months, human excrement froze nearly immediately. This frozen matter didn't soak into the ground nor drain into water bodies. People could pick it up, transport it, and dispose of it well away from their homes before any contamination had a chance to expand. Ice Age groups discovered that the cold could serve as a kind of natural regulation. Parasites that flourish in heat had difficulty surviving extended below freezing temperatures. Germs became sluggish, and insects disappeared altogether. What would be a deadly biological danger in warmer regions turned into something controllable beneath ice and snow. Winter diminished threats that no implement or remedy could handle. From a contemporary viewpoint, conditions appear harsh, but actually they demonstrate cooperation with the environment. These individuals didn't battle nature recklessly. They watched for patterns, experimented with results, and modified their actions, understanding when struggle was futile and when adaptation saved lives. This outlook didn't disappear after the Ice Age. It passed down through families, forming the survival ethos that would later characterize the Viking era. Being clean didn't equate to taking baths as we do today. Since water was valuable and warmth was limited, hygiene turned into something functional instead of luxurious, and deliberate instead of ceremonial. The priority was minimizing danger, not attaining ease. Each deed was evaluated by its contribution to staying alive. During warmer months, individuals used soft vegetation for their personal sanitation. The selection of leaves came from extensive practice rather than theoretical knowledge, and numerous leaves had inherent antimicrobial qualities that were only verified by modern science much later. Smooth stones collected from stream beds fulfilled specific functions without harming the skin. These items were selected due to their efficacy and because they avoided causing wounds that might lead to infection in winter. Snow and pure ice turned into crucial resources. Newly fallen snow surprisingly efficiently soaked up waste and dampness, and ice could be used to remove contamination through scraping. Even today, survival specialists in the Arctic acknowledge this rule when all alternatives are exhausted. The actual technique was not the focus, it was the purpose that mattered. Sanitation wasn't overlooked, it was intentionally reimagined for a frigid environment. Beyond being a provider of heat or a method for food preparation, fire served as a form of defense. Excavations reveal that tools were exposed to heat many times, more frequently than typical usage would demand, indicating protective practices. Rock tools exhibit markings that indicate they were purposely subjected to intense heat, implying purposeful attempts at sterilization. Unseen hazards, blades, scrapers, and vessels were positioned by fire, not to hone or alter their form, but to eliminate imperceptible menaces. Nevertheless, it was common knowledge that specific vegetation was intentionally combusted within dwellings. The resulting fumes repelled bugs and lowered sickness rates in cramped areas. Although unfamiliar with chemistry or microbiology, they grasped the relationship between actions and outcomes. Burning these plants led to a decrease in illness. Once the practice ceased, diseases resurfaced. Thus, the wisdom persisted. Fire transformed the surroundings. It sanitized implements, cleansed the air, and generated a more secure area amid pervasive invisible threats. Fire wasn't solely for survival. It functioned as medication, administered via practical knowledge and requirement. In the absence of pharmaceutical remedies, sustenance itself served as therapy. The selections regarding food consumption, cooking methods, and timing of meals were survival critical. Examination of ancient skeletal remains reveals a regular presence of bitter greens, wild garlic, and particular tree barks integrated into daily nutrition. Contemporary science validates that these flora possess parasite-fighting qualities, yet no rationale was sought by those peoples. They tracked effects and retained memories. Effective practices were preserved. Meat, particularly innards that are prone to parasitic infestation, underwent complete cooking. This wasn't a matter of taste or custom. It was a tactic honed through previous failures. Insufficiently cooked meals resulted in repercussions that every community had to avoid. Heat and duration were employed as cautious protective measures. Implements designed specifically for removing skin and fur are consistently found at various locations, demonstrating persistent vigilance against parasites. Lice and infestations weren't intermittent issues. They were everyday facts requiring regular response. Preserving wellness was not merely responsive, it was habitual and integrated into daily existence, since neglect was not permissible. Winter brought months of seclusion within sealed quarters with no possibility of leaving. Errors steadily accumulated, and refuse piled up. Smoke hung in the air. Moisture from exhalations condensed on surfaces in the absence of regulated ventilation. A dwelling that offered refuge from the cold could rapidly turn into a site of toxicity or sickness. Endurance hinged not just on staying warm, but on keeping air circulating without sacrificing thermal energy. Northern houses consistently exhibit ventilation elements, strategically placed apertures to let out smoke and harmful fumes, while retaining valuable heat. Achieving that equilibrium demanded accuracy acquired over time and practice. Excessive draft caused frigid conditions that compromised physical strength. Insufficient airflow led to asphyxiation, disease, and hidden threats. Each architectural choice had significance: where fires were situated, how vents were angled, and how sleeping quarters were arranged were not arbitrary. These were modifications developed over many generations via experimentation, mistakes, and fatalities. The living space itself evolved into a survival apparatus intended for resilience rather than ease. Hundreds of years afterward, Viking mariners brought that identical reasoning to the vast ocean, where chill became a perpetual reality rather than a periodic condition. The sea offered no leniency for errors, just one misstep on a winter expedition. It could lead to death long before spotting land. Hygiene on board wasn't about comfort. This was the discipline of survival. Waste was carefully managed, water supplies were protected, and fire was handled meticulously, because any contamination or mishap at sea was irreversible. Viking vessels weren't simple rafts relying on raw power. Instead, They were floating survival systems crafted for long-lasting endurance. Often, clean ice and fresh snow were safer than water left stagnant in containers for too long. Each decision minimized danger. Discipline outweighed strength, and restraint was valued over speed. This mindset didn't disappear with the longships. This echoes today in polar expeditions and military missions, where life is reduced to bare necessities: isolate waste, safeguard water, sterilize equipment, adapt, or face extinction. Today, people eliminate threats with a simple flush. Hand washing has become an automatic habit. We rely on systems so ingrained in everyday life that their absence is nearly inconceivable. Clean water flows effortlessly. Waste vanishes without thought. Disease seems remote and intangible. Yet these systems weren't conceived in labs or created during times of ease. They originated in icy refuges, where errors had instant and permanent consequences. They were forged in environments where one slip could lead to children perishing, elders growing frail, and entire communities vanishing without a trace. What we now term public health didn't start in textbooks or institutions. It originated with families who gained knowledge through hardship, keen observation, and memory. Through repeated experience and loss, they established rules that sustained life. Our immune systems still bear the marks of those adaptations. Our resilience isn't by chance, it's a legacy. Next time you're in a warm place with clean water instantly available, recall that this civilization wasn't founded on ease. It started with discipline in tough conditions, molded in times when failure spelled extinction. The Ice Age and Viking populations didn't endure because they were fearless or remarkably strong. They survived through caution. They mastered moderation. They honored boundaries. They realized that survival wasn't about dominating nature, but collaborating with it, heeding it, and adjusting to its laws. If this narrative resonates with memories handed down in your family, tales of migration, settlement, toil, perseverance, or adjustment over generations, those recollections count. They're more than nostalgia. They're living history. Through watching, reflecting, and sharing those memories, you aid in preserving the wisdom that once sustained humanity. And the lasting truth is straightforward. Human survival has always relied less on brute force and more on comprehension.